Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Almost 60 lives, most of which were those of very young people, youths, girls and boys, were destroyed in Macedonia very recently. A little earlier, some 30 lives were destroyed by tornado in the United States of America. Some 50 lives were lost in Yemen after the shooting by a mighty power, while lives are being lost in Eastern Europe on a regular basis. Notwithstanding the fact that some 40,000 people died since October the 7th of the Gregorian year 2023. Some 50,000 people lost their lives in earthquakes in Syria and of course in Turkey. Those lives which were lost or have been lost cannot be replaced. Nothing we can do to bring back those lives, however committed we may be, however hard we try, however strenuous our efforts be, however earnestly we endeavour. Yet we can do nothing to bring back those lives. However, something we can do. We can endeavour to preserve lives which are still on our earth. The lives, the precious lives of our fellow human beings, our fellow global citizens, babies, children, boys and girls, women, men, both elderly and the young. When I was a young pupil of English language, I came across a proverb, and though this has been a while, and no doubt, as I already indicated, English is not my first native tongue, and therefore I may be mistaken, or I might have mistaken. Yet the phrase goes something like this: don't throw the baby with the bath. I don't exactly know where this phrase has its origin. Nonetheless, I assume that in old days, especially in very modest households, babies had to be bathed, and especially in cold countries, and they had to be bathed in warm waters in order to ensure that they would not catch infections. And perhaps when midwives came, they found no other vessel other than those vessels in which often food had to be cooked, especially food which required to be cooked. Perhaps cereal, perhaps protein like meat and fish, or even eggs, for the whole family. And even those vessels were used by very modest households in order to wash and clean babies. Those vessels were often not transparent, and if the water, which sometimes was marred by detergent or soap or even oil, were not transparent for the baby to be seen, there was a danger that somebody would throw the baby with the water. Some 2,000 years earlier, Jesus Christ said a parable to his followers, including his disciples, and he interpreted the parable. This is the parable of the weeds, where a rich man commands his servants or slaves to go and sow the seeds, as we should call perhaps. But at the harvest it was seen that those seeds brought up weeds with them. The servants came and asked Jesus Christ if they would remove the weeds so that they would not be mingled with the good seed. But Jesus Christ says, in the character of the landlord, if I may use the expression, that he persuaded his slaves or servants to be patient until the time of the harvest, lest in order to pick up the weeds, they also picked up the good grain. This is a very important lesson for all of us. We should not haste to destroy our fellow countrymen and women, or even our global citizens. At least, not the innocent ones with the bad ones. In the very first book of the sacred Torah, or the Holy Bible, we see quite clearly that when Sarai, later known as Sarah in English, perhaps Shahara in the original text, sends her slave girl Haggai with the young boy named as Ishmael. And the Ishmael is extremely thirsty. Haggai perhaps more correctly, goes away a little distance, but the child cries, and the Almighty reveals to Haggai a spring of water so that Ishmael survives and is not killed in the wilderness. If God did not want the descendants of Ishmael to survive, he would not have showed Haggai that spring of water. Both Ishmael, the son of the slave girl, and Isaac or Isaac in English, descended from the same father, Abraham or Abraham. And they were half-brothers. I begin to wonder, not merely with all due shyness, but with all due despair, why the two people, or I should say the two peoples, born of the same father, descended from that same spring of life, is so eager today to kill each other instead of considering the very will of the father of their faith. I'm referring to none other than Abraham or Abraham. The lives lost in Macedonia cannot be replaced. The lives lost in the tornado of the United States of America, or in the United States of America, cannot be replaced. The lives lost in the Middle East, thousands and tens of thousands of those, cannot be replaced. The lives which are being lost in Eastern Europe cannot be replaced. But should we not, claiming to be human beings, consider the value of the lives of our fellow global citizens? The weeds were found in the seed, good seed. But that particular farmer, the landlord, persuaded his slaves to await the right moment. The right moment meant, of course, the end of the age. Are we so blind today not to be able to see the value or even count the value of human lives? In certain countries, like in the Republic of Ireland, the 17th of March happens to be a national holiday known as St. Patrick's Day. Two of my close friends have their birthdays today. They're ladies. Very close friends whom I met in person, with whom I had pleasures of discussing various matters. Yet, this day should have been a day of joy for me, rejoicing with my friends. Alas, I despair with those who lost their loved ones. I reiterate what I said a moment ago. We cannot replace the lives which are lost. but as human beings we can exercise humanity. Even remembering the commandments given by God the Almighty through his prophets, according to the Old Testament or the Holy Sacred Torah and the Old Testament, notwithstanding the wonderful lessons taught by the New Testament, the Gospels and the Epistles. Preserving life is important. The prophet Isaiah said, share your food, share your clothes with your loved ones. In the New Testament, according to the New Testament, both Jesus Christ and the apostles reminded us the value of human lives and called us to exercise humanity. Even in the Old Testament we read, God the Almighty says that the vengeance which ought to be exercised but ought not to be exercised by human beings, but his. And if I most respectfully and with all due honour and fear on my part quote the words the Almighty says, and I quote, vengeance is mine, I unquote. I thank all of you in anticipation for your kind understanding and the appropriate response, and bid you a solemn night from our country. Thank you. May the Almighty protect all of you, the same Creator of every human being and every single life that exists. Good night, and I say shalom.